In today's video, we're going to talk about 7 reasons why I can't lose weight. So first up, the basics. We'll talk about your deficit and the lack thereof. Next up, we'll talk about people who have low energy expenditure, then an underlying reason for that, which is low activity level. Then we'll get into kind of some of the hormonal effects that happen as you're losing weight. So a slowing metabolism and rising hunger. And then finally, we'll get into the brain stuff, which is being surrounded by a food environment of hyperpalatable food, which makes it really tough. And then finally, just talking about your brain and the way in which it fights fat loss. Okay, so the first of our 7 reasons why I can't lose weight is simply that you're not creating a caloric deficit. A caloric deficit is an energy shortfall between how much energy you're using and how much energy you're absorbing from food. And when you've got a deficit like that, if you've got a 500 calorie deficit, your body has to tap into stores of energy to fuel that energy need. And what it generally does is it'll tap into your body fat to use it. Sometimes it might eat up a little bit of protein. Generally, it's something like 75% body fat and 25% muscle protein. And if you continually create that deficit, you will lose weight. But the problem is that your energy needs and how much energy you're using and how much energy you're absorbing are very, very tightly intertwined by hormonal signals and the brain. So it's a complex, dynamic relationship. So if you just think, oh, I'm just going to cut 500 calories and everything will be rosy in perpetuity, it probably isn't going to work out like that, because your body has very, very clever ways of defending against the deficit. But nonetheless, if you're not losing any weight, the chances are you are not creating a caloric deficit. Okay, our second reason why you might be struggling to lose weight is simply because you have low energy expenditure. When people are setting up a weight loss kind of program in the physique world, so these people that get really, really ripped, the first thing they want to understand is their maintenance calories, and they will try to work out how many calories someone is using to maintain their body weight. Then they'll subtract a deficit of 20%, and this kicks off the fat loss phase. The problem is working out what your maintenance calories are. If you just jump on a calorie calculator, that could be absolutely miles and miles out. And it is particularly harsh on people who have lower than average energy expenditure. And I'll throw up some data now which shows you that energy needs are absolutely all over the place. And if you are unlucky enough to be one of the people that has very, very low energy expenditure for their body weight, then it can be very, very hard to get your deficit going, because you need to eat far, far less than a typical person in order to create your caloric deficit. Okay, our third reason why you might be struggling to lose weight is that you've got low activity. And when I say low activity, I'm not trying to say you're lazy. I'm trying to say that you might not have a very high activity level, which is how much energy expenditure you have relative to your basal metabolic rate. And this is kind of a multiplier that encapsulates a whole lot of stuff, and a big part of it is just genetic. Some people fidget a lot naturally, they move a lot, and when you overfeed them in the studies, they just don't gain any weight because they burn all that excess energy off. And these are people that are just naturally slim. They've got fantastic genetics for staying slim. They're often kind of hard gainers, so they also struggle to put muscle mass on. But it's an amazing adaptation to have genetically, because it stops you getting fat when you overeat. Other people are incredibly unlucky and they have low activity, and this can be their genetics, how much they fidget. If they have a desk job, this can really lower their activity level. Whether they do any exercise, particularly kind of endurance type stuff, will increase your activity level. So there's a whole lot of stuff, and all this does, if you have low activity, it once again means that your total energy expenditure is going to be pretty low, which means that it's pretty hard to create your deficit. So, lots of women can lose weight at, 18, 1900, 2000 calories, whereas other women are just plumbing the depths of kind of 1300, 1200, 1100, simply because their activity level is very low and they've got very little energy to play with. So our fourth reason is getting into the complex stuff. We're now starting to talk about hormones and how your body will defend against losing weight. So if you have managed to lose 10, 20 pounds, what you will find it is gradually much, much harder to lose weight. And there are 2 primary reasons for this. Your metabolism is going to slow down, so your energy expenditure is going to decline, and your hunger is going to increase. And this is basically your brain's way of trying to defend its fat mass. And it turns out, they found out in 1994 that your fat mass is actually communicating with your brain via hormones. In particular, they found a hormone called leptin, and since they found loads of other hormones in the gut and other parts of the body, even the skeleton. And what this hormone does, leptin, is it basically sends a signal to your brain about how much energy there is in the body. And when your leptin level, when the fat mass declines and your leptin level drops very low, it basically tells your body that you're starting to starve. So what it will do is it will reduce energy expenditure and it will increase hunger. And when I'm talking about the slowing metabolism, I'll throw up some data now. They have shown that, just after losing kind of, 10, 15 pounds over a couple of month period, there is a very, very large decline in our total energy expenditure. And normally the primary driver of this decline is a reduction in your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, you just start moving around less, your body becomes more efficient with how it uses energy, and it just becomes harder and harder to lose weight because your total energy expenditure that you have to play with in terms of creating that deficit has declined. And this is one of the reasons why people are often going on and on about things like Fitbits in order to replace that decline in NEAT that it just happens naturally to defend your fat mass with activity, with taking steps, with moving around throughout the day, because it's been shown that exercise just isn't that effective. The second major adaptation that we get when we lose weight is that our brain tells us to eat more food. So basically our brain realizes that we're losing weight through the hormones from our fat mass, from our stomach, from our pancreas, from our skeleton, all these things. They act on the brain and they tell us, we need to eat more food. And they've actually tried to model how much hungrier people get in response to weight loss. And it is incredible. Basically, hunger rises to the point where there's just an energy gap that you naturally want to eat back the weight that you've lost. And the energy that you've lost, and you will gain the weight back. And so this is one of the primary drivers why people are really successful in losing weight, but typically weight regain begins between 6 and 12 months, and it's very common for people to have regained a majority of the weight that they lose kind of a year, 2, 3 years down the track, because these kind of non-conscious drivers, the hunger is a really powerful signal to your body to regain weight, and it persists often until people regain the weight that they have lost. Okay, our sixth reason why it's very, very hard is getting into the brainy stuff now. So basically, you've got these hormonal responses to losing weight. So if you lose 20 pounds, something that will happen is your energy expenditure will slow down, your metabolism will slow down, and your hunger signals will increase. So you've got this energy gap, so your body is telling you regain the weight. So it's really kind of ironic that the adaptation of your body to kind of eat less and move more is to tell your body to eat more and move less. It's, that's just how it is. That's the science of it. So when you've got those signals telling you to eat more and move less, and you're trying to control what you're doing, and you live in a hyper-palatable food environment, this is an absolute nightmare. And basically, one of the primary drivers of the obesity epidemic could be described like this. So they often say something like, your genes load the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. And so basically, if you're genetically predisposed to kind of obesity, and then you're surrounded by just crap food that helps you overeat, it can be really troubling. And I'll throw up some data now, and you'll see that the vast majority of the calorie intake rise in the US over the last kind of 40 years has come from 3 ingredients. So from added fat, refined grain, so flour basically, and added sugar. And so these 3 ingredients, what they do is they create kind of food products, junk food, and this food is hyper palatable. So our natural kind of satiety signals to tell us to stop eating are just totally overridden by junk food because it's just so damn tasty. And what they've got is that perfect mix of kind of fat and carbohydrate with a little bit of salt and sugar, and it's very, very energy dense, and we can just eat that stuff all day. So if you're kind of battling your weight and you're doing it in a food environment that's really, really kind of troubling, you're surrounded by really bad food, it makes it super, super hard. And this is one of the reasons why it's just so hard to keep weight off, because we're surrounded by this terrible food that does not help kind of control our hormones, control our hunger, control our satiety, and keep weight off. Okay, and lastly, we're just going to talk about the brain very briefly, because at the end of the day, weight loss is kind of a battle that occurs in the brain. It's like your cerebrum, the bit that kind of solves problems and how you've got to think about stuff, kind of battling against your hypothalamus, which is this tiny part of the brain that receives all those hormonal signals about your energy status and your satiety and your hunger and all of these things. And it is, they call it the adipostat. So basically, it's the thermostat of your fat mass. It's the thing that is regulating your hunger and your energy expenditure. And it is the thing that when it signals that we're losing weight, it is the thing that drives us to regain weight. And it's a real challenge. And basically what they've learned in the literature over the years is originally a lot of what they studied about kind of weight loss was just thinking about energy in, energy out. And then they realized that there's a whole bunch of hormone stuff, there's loads of endocrinology stuff through the 90s and the 2000s. And then lately they are thinking more and more about the brain and how important the brain is in regulating your fat mass. And when we think about this problem in terms of the brain, what are the things that we can do in order to make this whole challenge easier? So there it is. Obviously, in all of these things, the one lesson that you should really take away is try not to blame yourself. This is a very complex problem, and essentially you have got a part of your brain that wants to conserve fat mass, and if you are genetically predisposed to gaining weight, then you gain the weight. It is going to be very hard to get that weight off. It's not impossible. I've lost loads of weight myself and kept it off. But you really want to think about what you're doing, because if you think about what you're doing and you're smart about it, it makes this whole process a lot easier. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you sign up and or subscribe if you enjoyed it. Okay, I'll catch you later. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you jump on the email list and get our 5 simple strategies to start losing weight cheat sheet.